We got some major NFL draft news around the Tennessee Titans, and we're going to be talking about it because it does impact the Raiders and every team in the 2025 NFL Draft. I'm Mitchell Renz, host of the Raiders Report, and that's going to be how we start today's show. Then I'm going to talk about whether or not the Raiders should potentially trade up to the number 1 overall pick. It's no secret. The Silver and Black need a quarterback, but does it actually make sense to move up to try to go get your QB? And then if I'm going to sit here and say that maybe we have to move up, what does it cost for the Raiders to go from 6 all the way up to 1? I'm going to show you a trade in the past because there's only been one time in NFL history that a team has moved up from 6 to number 1. So for those of you that do not know, and this ended up happening yesterday, some rumors have been circulating around Tennessee over the past 48 hours, potentially moving on from the number 1 overall pick. And don't get me wrong, a lot of y'all might have missed this because we were getting ready to watch the big game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Chiefs. FKC's down below. But right now, and this is according to multiple NFL insiders, the Tennessee Titans are at least interested, and they're going to listen to potential offers to move up to number 1. Sure, Tennessee might be able to add a quarterback in free agency instead of the draft. For the Titans to put this report out, and that the fact that there's already rumors circulating around it tells me that they don't love Cam Ward or that they don't love Shedeur Sanders and that this is a team that wants to trade back. Here's what Dan Graziano had to say about 2 days ago on the Titans draft pick. There was still a long way to go until April's draft and a lot of evaluations to make before then. But I have talked to multiple people who think that the Titans could trade out of the top pick and look for their quarterback solution elsewhere. The thinking is that the Titans roster are so extensive that unless they are absolutely sold on one of the quarterbacks as a franchise changer, they're better off seeing what teams would be willing to offer that pick. So you got Graziano saying it. Ian Rappaport said it literally yesterday that the Titans are open to trading the number 1 overall pick. If we're already hearing those rumors and the fact that those rumors were leaking right before the big game with the Super Bowl, that tells me a lot of stuff was talked about during media week during the Super Bowl, which tells me this is a team that wants to trade the number 1 overall pick. So you let me know down below. This is going to be the pinned comment here on today's show. Give me a yes, give me a no. Do you want the Raiders to trade up for the number 1 pick? My answer coming up here in just a moment. In the NFL and life in general, you always have to look at what the potential cost is. The Raiders and every NFL team should always pick up the phone and at least just see what the heck it costs. If it was up to me, the only way in hell I am trading up for number 1 is if that quarterback is Cam Ward. I'm not trading up for Shedeur. I'm not trading up for anybody else besides Cam Ward. This is the number 1 quarterback in this year's draft. But again, with that being said, depending on the price tag, because I'm not going to overpay. The Las Vegas Raiders have so many holes that they need to try to fill. Giggity. And don't get me wrong, maybe in free agency with $92.3 million, they're able to fill a lot of those holes, and then going out and trading up for a quarterback makes a lot more sense. At the time that I am making this video, February 10th, I would sit up here and say that it would not be a smart move for the Raiders to give up all of their draft capital and move up to the number 1 spot to take a quarterback, even if that person is Cam Ward. However, I don't think that it's out of the realm of possibilities, and just because of how crazy this offseason could potentially be. So coming up here, I'm going to tell you why I think a trade could happen with Tom Brady, with John Spytek, with Pete Carroll, potentially going up to the number 1 overall pick, because if it's a deal, you got to be willing to listen to the deal. Before I get into that, though, huge shout out to our sponsor, ZBiotics. And hey, raise your hand if you woke up a little bit slower than what you needed to this morning after watching the Eagles kick the crap out of the Kansas City Chiefs. But let's face it, after a night with drinks, you don't bounce back the next day like you used to. And I have to make a choice. I can either have a great night or a great next day. That is until I found ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol. Pre-alcohol is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to drink this probiotic before drinking alcohol. Drink responsibly and get a good night's sleep to fuel your best tomorrow. So stay in the loop and go to zbiotics.com/chatsports. You can also scan the QR code on the screen right now to get 15% off your first order when you use ChatSports at checkout. You can also sign up for a subscription using my code so you can stay prepared no matter the time or occasion. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund you your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/chatsports and use code ChatSports at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, ZBiotics, for sponsoring this episode of the Raiders Report, and hopefully more good times are rolling. So coming up here, I'm going to tell you why I think that the Raiders could make this trade to go up for number one. I still don't think it's likely, and I really, truly don't see at this moment why the Raiders would do this with all the other holes out there, and that's even coming from me with, being like, hey, we need to go out there and draft a quarterback, but with all the free agency things that are going to happen around the QB position, trading up and giving up a lot of draft capital. Again, it's not what I think that this organization is going to do. But let's talk about why they could do it. The Raiders do need a quarterback. And if you go down a path that, let's say you kind of went down last offseason where you only bring in one dude, and if the only guy that you're bringing in is somebody of the caliber of Gardner Minshew, I'm going to sit up here and go, you need to go out and you need to add a quarterback. If the Silver and Black sign a Sam Darnold, who Adam Schefter reported and said today is the Raiders are eyeing Darnold. If you go out and you get a Justin Fields, maybe a Russell Wilson, maybe you make a trade for somebody, then the need of a quarterback isn't there. If you are entering the draft and you are still wondering who that starting quarterback is going to be for the Silver and Black, well, then you got to consider Cam Ward. I have been on this show, and I have been for a long time saying Ward is my favorite quarterback. He was my favorite quarterback last March, and I said that he was going to be the top quarterback taken. I'm telling you this right now. The best quarterback to pair with Chip Kelly, the Raiders' new OC, is this young man right here. The only other quarterback that I would say has the potential to go in the top 5 is Shedeur Sanders of Colorado, and I know that Tom Brady's got a great relationship with Shedeur. We know that Dion wants Shedeur to go to the Raiders, but with all that being said, I'm not trading up for Shedeur Sanders. Quite frankly, if the Raiders want Sanders, I believe he's going to be available to them at number 6. And if you know a quarterback that you like, the Raiders like Sanders, is available to you at number 6, that could also be a reason why you don't trade up and go get a guy like Cam Ward. Here's the one thing that I do know, though. This is going to be the craziest offseason in Raiders history. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure those notifications are turned on because free agency, we got money to spend. The Raiders are already doing a lot of aggressive things in terms of the coaching staff. And when you go out and you make Chip Kelly the highest paid OC in the National Football League, you know good stuff's going to happen. If you're wondering, Mitch, well, we're sitting here talking a lot about quarterbacks potentially moving up. If you want to check out the top quarterbacks in this year's draft to pair with Chip Kelly and the Raiders, I put out this video a few days ago, maybe a week ago. That link's going to be down in the comments, down in the description of today's show. Let's go to another reason here of why I think that the Raiders could potentially trade up. Tom Brady and Dave Ziegler have a solid relationship, and some of you are going, well, Mitch, what do you mean? Dave Ziegler. Dave Ziegler now is the assistant GM with the Tennessee Titans. I get it. Mike Borgonzi, he was with Kansas City. He's now the GM down there in Tennessee. But the reason why Ziegler was one of the reasons why he got a job was with McDaniels a few years ago when he was the Raiders GM. Tom Brady and Ziegler just have a solid relationship. Goes all the way back to New England. And I could see the Titans that know very well that they have a lot of missing pieces. You pick up the phone, you give that conversation with Tom Brady, and who knows, anything is possible from there on out. The next reason is this. I don't know if it's going to cost too much, right? Like, you look at the draft last season on how expensive the number 1 overall pick was because of quarterbacks like Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, right? A lot of good quarterbacks were going high. If we're talking about just price tags, if you wanted to move up to the number 1 pick this year, I can make an argument that it might be one of the cheapest years in NFL draft history to move up to number 1. And I say that because of players like Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter are probably regarded as the top dudes out there, and the quarterbacks are going to slide a little bit. So when you talk about overall price tag, I can make an argument that the number 1 pick right now is not just on sale. It might be a yard sale. So coming up here, what does a trade cost to move up to number 1? We can sit up here and we can have all these conversations about, do the Raiders want to do this? Do the Raiders want to do that? But you still need to know what it costs, right? I can't sit up here and say, I want a new car, And then when I go out shopping, I'm shopping for cars that are so far out of my price tag, it doesn't make any sense. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you 3 different kinds of trades, okay? The first one, it is this. It is what the trade value chart says it costs to move from 6 up to 1. And the way that I usually think about this is when you want something, moving up 6 to 1, you have to overpay just by a little. It's just typically what happens during the NFL draft. So here's what it would cost, according to the trade value chart, for the Raiders to go from 6 up to 1. The Silver and Black get the number 1 overall pick. The Tennessee Titans get your first round pick this year, number 6. Your second round pick at 37. Reminder, the Raiders have 2 third-round picks. They have a pick at 68. They have a pick at 73. Based on the chart, you're going to be able to get away with 73. But then you also have to give away your first-round pick in 2026. One of the other things that I love to do on this show is talk about past history. Talk about what it has cost in recent years. Problem is, we don't have anything recent. In fact, only one time in NFL history has the number 6 team moved up to number 1, and that was back in 1997. I don't remember this year all that well. The Rams, though, number 1 overall pick. The New York Jets, they got number 6. They got a 3rd-round pick, they got a 4th-round pick, and they got a 7th-round pick. So 4 picks in total. I'm telling you this right now, if this is what it would cost to move up to number 1, I would do this in a flippin' heartbeat for Cam Ward. I'm not kidding you when I tell you that. Because then, and this wasn't for a quarterback either, which is why it's also like kind of hard to look at. And back then, like teams would move up all the time for non-quarterbacks. In today's day and age, the only way a team is moving up from 6 to 1 is to take a quarterback. We got to be able to realize that. However, though, I wanted to be able to give my trade offer, and I wanted to make it a little bit different from the past 2, so hear me out when I say that. Also, on top of that, there's players that if I'm the Silver and Black, I'm going to try to just move on from and save some of my draft capital. I don't know if the Titans would do this, quite frankly. I don't think that they would, but this would be at least the offer that I would give them. You go number 1 overall pick. In my mind, I'm getting Cam Ward. You're going to give up the number 6 overall pick. On top of that, I'm going to give up pick 37, and I'm going to give up pick 107. In my mind, I can use pick 68 and 73 if there's a player that I really, really like in the second round. I can package something to potentially be able to move up. Also, the Raiders have 3 6th-round picks. Maybe I could use one of those 6. Maybe I could use another 5th to get back up there near the 4th round. I'm going to try to move on from Jack Jones. I'm going to try to move on from Thayer Munford. The Tennessee Titans have a need at corner, and they have a need on offensive line. I don't think Jones starts on either of those teams. However, though, they can at least be used for depth, and if I can at least just get something for him, and if it helps seals the deal, I'm going to do it instead of giving up future draft picks for players that I believe could potentially make an impact on this team in the long haul, because I don't think Munford and I don't think Jack Jones are going to be a part of this regime in the long haul. So in conclusion, I do believe that the Tennessee Titans are going to try to trade down from number 1 simply because they said about a month ago that they're looking to draft a generational type of player. When I hear generational, there's only one player that's come to my mind, and I know I've said this before on this show, and I believe that generational player is Travis Hunter. If you know that that's the wording and that's the language that they're putting out there, that tells me that they're not interested in a quarterback, because as much as I like Cam Ward, he's not a generational type of talent at the quarterback position. The only way I'm moving up to number 1 is if it's for the quarterback out of Miami, Cam Ward, and it needs to be at a discounted price. And I believe this year you're going to see a bit of a discounted price to be able to move up to number 1. And I will say I would be shocked if the Raiders moved up to 1 based on what this roster looks like today on February 10th. If they go out in free agency and they spend a lot of money building in the trenches, offensive line, defensive line, and they take care of a lot of their needs with that $92.3 million, and if really all you have left is to be able to build depth in quarterback, well then sure, I would entertain the idea, but I just don't think that that's going to happen. If the Raiders do trade for the number 1 pick, you already know. Make sure you're subscribed. We're going live here on the Raiders Report.